anarchist likes voting and democracy. In Anarchy Works, violent socialist anarchist Peter Gelderloos explains his counterintuitive yet somewhat reluctant support for voting. Other anarchists certainly disagree with him about this. They include some of those who I've mentioned before, like Emma Goldman, Bakunin, and Kropotkin, but not completely, and some more so than others. Bakunin and Kropotkin are more like anarcho syndicalists than or libertarian socialists. They're sometimes smeared as anarcho communists. Peter Gelderloos, in particular, is probably an anarcho syndicalist who is closer to being an anarcho communist than the others. Anyway, Gelderloos honestly offers a whole bunch of word salad and platitudes that sound like what liberals say about democracy and voting. I'm not an anarchist, but his anarchist principles don't seem to really apply to voting. Gelderloos argues that voting is permitted as long as all other decisions in an anarchist society follow the spirit of solidarity, whatever the fuck exactly that means. You can imagine how he might define the spirit of solidarity in this context, but it seems pretty damn clear that this would be difficult to implement in practice, to say the least. Gelderloos also claims that layers of decision making should be established. Uh, bro, Gelderloos, precisely how the fuck is this not turning anarchy into democracy? Apparently, bureaucracy can be avoided if power is temporary and phased out. Hmm. Hasn't he heard of Caesar? This should have been tried before. It didn't end well. I can somewhat understand from an anarcho syndicalist perspective that the people slash workers would vote on decisions made by companies that employ them, but that's attempting to turn the workplace into a democracy. That's what anarcho syndicalism is. There can be levels of decision making that follow the spirit of solidarity. And to be fair, Gelderloos is probably talking about a committee of people being in charge rather than one person. However, guess what? Power is temporary in democracies. At least it is in theory. I'm not a huge fan of democracy, but this shit is all starting to sound a lot like democracy. I mean, I get that there are theoretical differences, but I don't think that it would turn out very differently. If you are for voting, levels of decision making based on solidarity and temporary power, you're a hell of a lot more of a minarchist libertarian who likes democracy than an anarchist. So, anarchist Peter Gelderloos gets into his acceptance of voting, layers of decision making based on solidarity, and temporary power that can be phased out. Sounds pretty fucking odd for an anarchist. Gelderloos is supposedly some kind of anarcho syndicalist or libertarian socialist, as far as I can tell. However, he sounds much more like an anarcho communist when he spouts these opinions, at the very least. He gets even closer to loving democracy than anarchists such as Bakunin and Kropotkin. Gelderloos's reasons for tolerating voting are just dumb because they're almost exactly what liberals say. Dumb from an anarchist perspective, anyway. Voting is apparently permitted as long as all other governmental decisions are made in the quote unquote spirit of solidarity. If you want to, you can easily declare any action as being the spirit of solidarity. Gelderloos also advocates for layers of decision making, which is basically the fucking same as a system of checks and balances in a democracy. Also, bureaucracy can supposedly be avoided if power is temporary and can be phased out. This is, in theory, exactly the fucking same as term limits of politicians, man. And if you're talking about relying on someone to willfully give up their power instead of term limits, good fucking luck with that. Caesar didn't exactly give up his goddamn power when he was supposed to, did he? And a conspiracy of politicians murdered him in the public. And he's far from the only example like that in history. Anarchist Peter Gelderloos likes voting and democracy.